Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Monday night of To an Imperfect Union, brought to you by the political consciousness of West Coast Steeler fan. Uh, okay, let's see if Mr. Williams didn't get it, then maybe some other people didn't either. So let's see here. So let me send a few other people. Okay. Let's go back here. Anyway, seems like as every week we have these little glitches here, but we're working very hard to try to solve them. So I'm going to send these to a few people that may have okay. Okay. Had to resend a couple emails here. Maybe it doesn't. StreamYard doesn't seem to like bulk, so I'll send them separately. And see if that sorry to take this long, but after all, the only thing that we're going to really talk about is the war in Ukraine, so it doesn't really make that much difference, does it? No, actually, that's a lot of bullshit because I'm trying to stay away from the war in Ukraine, but when we get to our open mic, we'll see if some of our other guests decide that they would like to use it. But I welcome Mr. Scott to the show. Greetings, Mr. Scott. How are you doing this evening?
Very good, James. I'm on another computer. If this computer is kind of janky, so if if it looks too janky, I'll have to go to another room.
Mr. Scott, you know, in this modern day and age, me and you right now might be the only ones that know what janky means. we got so many new words and new spellings now. You know, I mean, yeah, I look, in the dictionary now, and There's words in there that didn't used to be there. I remember when we had the discussion about the word ain't. Yeah, I guess I'm really dating myself now, but welcome to Monday night, Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you, and I think janky could be a universal. I mean, when you hear it, you know it's something
Oh
that's
yeah,
bump.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? It has a connotation. You know?
you know,
I don't want to be called it. So,
no, no, no. But right about now, your great grandson is looking at you and saying, "Janky, what's that?"
hey, they
You know,
might pick it up. They might pick it up. It might be a new rap
I mean,
song. Janky.
hey, say, I knew you was gonna get on the. But Mrs. Scott, you and Mr. Allen did a very good interview this weekend with the candidate for sheriff of Halpern County.
Yes, Miss
Uh,
Sawana Kirkland. Sawana Kirkland. Yeah.
I was very much more impressed with the interview and the candidate than I have been in some of the other candidates that we brought on for sheriff and some others. And Mr. Scott, one of the things that we were talking about when we talked about what was her name? Her first name,
Suwana.
Sawan.
Suwana Kirkland. Miss Sawana Kirkland.
When we talked about Miss Kirkland, she is she's the head of she was the head of corrections in Halpern County. And I was very interested in some of the questions that weren't asked, especially like when you talk about the inmate population of Halpern County. Now, are Minneapolis and St. Paul considered Halpern County, or are they separate?
Yeah, there's two. Minneapolis is in Hennepin County.
Okay.
St. Paul is in Ramsey County. And pretty much both of these cities hold the headquarters of those two counties. They're the two biggest counties in the state, and they're right next door to each other.
Now, once again, I've kind of asked you before. Is there a distinct boundary line between the two counties, like a river as a
Yeah.
freeway has separated them? How does that go?
Well, for the most part, St. Paul is on the east side of the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River runs through both cities, and like I say many times, there's a bridge on a street, Lake Street. You can walk across this bridge and take one step, you're in St. Paul. Take one step back, you're in Minneapolis. So so I've always considered the cities neighborhoods. They're just run differently. They look different. They have a lot of nuance type things that make them different. Like here in Minneapolis, you pay one utility bill, they pick up your trash, they do all that. Well, in St. Paul, you have to hire your own contractor, to come. It's an individual thing. So there's a lot of nuances between the two cities. For the most part, I think St. Paul has historically been better run, but you can ask some of the residents that they wouldn't agree with that. So but basically, your question, it's right across the Mississippi River. It's that close. That's Minneapolis, St. Paul. And when you look at the Minnesota Twins logo, they'll have two people shaking hands across the river. One's in Minneapolis, one's in St. Paul. And a friend of mine wanted to do a new logo and have one of these people be black, and they shot it down.
Well, you could also make one of them Indian.
Very well, very well.
Excuse me, indigenous.
That's okay. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very cute too, because this was indigenous land. And Dr. Casey, oh, I'm just such a vision of loveliness. Let me catch my breath. Let me catch my breath. I'm just overwhelmed with it. Greetings to you, man.
How are you doing, Mr. Scott?
Wait.
I'm getting much better now. The
Oh,
sun is shining. Everything is better now.
hold on. Let me try to see if I can get Dr. Casey's head in this shot here.
Yeah, man.
Good evening, Dr. Casey. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Uh, see, usually I reserve the Chester approach for myself, but it seems like Mr. Scott has taken that over. So, so I think where I have West Coast Steeler fan, I'm just gonna put at Hustler for Mr. Scott.
You are, y'all are crazy.
Hey man, if you don't have no rap, you're not gonna get nowhere. Okay, you got.
You know what? I love the Hustler store there. I actually had me some jeans from that store there.
See, y'all see now there you go again with those images.
It's some regular old jeans, some bell bottoms.
Well,
I
see
actually get them into
now
some stores now.
we have a Hustler store here in San Diego,
Oh,
and the restaurant that I used to work at when I first came here, which was in 2003, used to be diagonally across from the Hustler store and the Hustler restaurant. Uh, then of course Hard Rock and all those moved in, but yeah, just regular old jeans from a Hustler shop. Okay, I'll go for that if you want me to, but that's
no,
okay.
really, I could go get. Well, I didn't cut them into shorts now because
see,
n-
see.
they are long shorts. These are some of my mom. Well, I bought them when I first published my first book back in 2000. No, I don't know when I bought them. I might have bought them in 2006, or I might have bought them in 2008. For one of my friends' wedding, I went to LA, and whenever I go to LA, that's one of my stores I go to.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, uh,
Speaking of books, I haven't received mine yet. I'm just wondering that I had mentioned that.
Which book? The Spiritual Human Behavior is a upload book, so it was a digital.
Oh,
Uh,
it's digital.
yes.
Okay, how do I access?
When we get finished with this show, I will go and walk you through the process and send you an email. It should have come to you, or should be available to you. It's instantaneous, but I will check when we wrap this up.
well, yeah. Now
James, no, I'm not going to say this
go
because
ahead.
I, I don't janky. I'm not gonna. No, I'm not gonna go with
It's
that.
it's not janky. It's a digital. It's a digital product. So as soon as you make the transaction, you are getting a product. So it may be in your email and you just didn't check.
Oh, maybe I should check my spam and everything too. Yeah,
Yeah,
because a lot of my
Mr.
stuff goes to that.
Yeah, Mr. Scott, sometimes he forgets that he has more than one place. But, but anyway, uh, I am going to ask you this because Mr. Scott, just brought it up here. We opened up the show, and Mr. Scott was said that something was janky, and I was and I was saying to myself, how many people, like I'm sure his great granddaughters, if she was sitting beside him and he said the word janky, she would be pulling on his pants leg. What's janky, Grandpa? You know, you-
First off, Mr. Scott, it's
Well, no,
self-published.
you
That
have to
ain't
give the
janky. That
context.
just
No, you have to give
ain't no
context to Dr.
middleman.
Casey. You have to give context to that. It was a very innocuous mention of the word, saying that I'm on a different computer today, and I said this computer is kind of janky, so I
Yeah,
don't
but you
know
just
how.
called the way my product is getting delivered janky too. So now I'm just thinking, like, wait a minute now. Hold up. Wait a minute. Independent publishing. That means that as soon as you pay for it. You should get it in your mailbox.
But see, that goes back to what James was saying. The new, getting stuff online and it's instantly sent online. And
Well,
that's
it's all of my stuff are audiobooks. Well, my new stuff. Now, if you order It's My Time, I actually publish that through a actually publishing house, like through Author House Publishing. So if you get that, they're going to print that and send it to you. Me, the only way that I'm making these books into physical copies outside of the workbooks is if I don't wanna write it. I would have to get a program and have it type it out for me and then go back through and edit it.
right,
I don't
right.
wanna do none of that. So what's actually going to happen is, right now I'm in the process of editing a lot of content, but the goal is to take those books, the books that you actually get right now is not even gonna be available like that, anymore. It's actually gonna be turned into a class, and then people will go through learning the process of processing their emotions and understanding why they have those emotions the way they do. And then the other courses will be the faith courses.
Okay, I need to keep up with you on that technology piece because that's something that I'm sorely lacking with my books and my T-shirts. I have these T-shirts. You can't beg a man and fight him at the same time. And
Right.
I put those online. I have a couple more T-shirts with my dad's sayings, and I
Hmm.
really need to pick up the marketing pace on that. So we may have to talk about and it's not. I mean, we might have to talk about your
Okay, so
company.
I'm not gonna say that I'm the best in that category because for a long time I have run from the fame portion of success, and the only way that I can be successful is to really be famous because it's all me and my words. So I have kind of avoided sales and anything that would cause any amount of stress because um it just was simpler for me that way. So I am just now breaking into the threshold of full on um success as a life coach and author. Actually before now, I don't think I've ever really promoted my even my first book like that. I've always been kind of hesitant for various reasons. But it's a new day and I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I've that life coaching thing. I've been kind of dabbing in it since 2005. I want to say,
Hmm.
but I never thought, or I never saw myself as being a life coach. And since I've looked into it, I found that there are a lot of people that can actually enter this field and have things that they can contribute to this field. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of like you, Dr. Casey. It's like, do I want to put in the time to be famous? Because it takes a lot of time to be famous.
I mean, you got a lot of for women, it's even more because you got to do hair and makeup, and people want to see you like that, like all the time. I don't want to do that. I want to be regular, degular every day, and then if I need to be dressed, then I'm dressed. But I don't want to just be walking around fancy for no reason. Like I like my regular life. But then as far as the life coaching for me, because I was studying psychology, it was either do I go the route to become a psychologist or do I do something different? So I looked at all of my options. I am a pros and cons, weighing out the options type of a person. So when I looked at the two options, they are exactly the same thing, but one is licensed and one is not. Um, you really walking people through the same thing. So for me, I had already had so many of the skills and well, at the time I didn't. I was getting my degree, my bachelor's degree, and then I was going to go into my master's and I just started my master's when right before I was getting divorced. And in the process of getting the divorce, building my house, raising two children, I just let go of the masters, and then that really made me go ahead into the life coaching because I can just pick up and do that, and it's something that I do regularly. And it really was starting from me doing my first book, and then after I did my first book, I kind of God kind of tricked me into going and speaking at a school, and it kind of just trickled from there. So this is my alternative to having to go and do all the things you got to do to become a psychologist.
You know, Mr. Scott, people our age or your age, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. 2 generations, I believe, between the two of us, but I spoke of it uh, many times. Letters, those things, PhD, masters, those things meant a lot to our generation. When you heard those words, you assumed that those people were educated. A lot of times they were educated Negroes, but that's a different story. We'll talk about that a little bit later, or miseducated Negroes. Anyway, uh,
Yankee.
but when you heard, but when you heard PhD or MBA, you
Ooh.
associated a certain type of intellect with that. Is that necessary today, Mr. Scott?
Well, I think that we had a certain thought that was a big deal because we weren't allowed to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, there are people that I know. I have a very good friend I went to church with. He grew up, his dad was a deacon there, but he worked at a bakery. But I always saw him at church, and this guy looked like he should be a judge. I mean, when you talked to him, when you saw the way his demeanor was, I mean, he was a regal type of person. And so his son ends up going to this military, my friend, military academy in a place called Shattuck. The school is called Shattuck in Faribault, Minnesota. Exclusive, exclusive. A lot of the pro hockey players come out of that school. From that to this day, they still come out of Shattuck School. He graduated from there with honors. My friend, his son, he goes to Stanford, graduates from Stanford, and he's one of the top financial people in Minnesota, black man. But that's had that aura because it was something that they said we couldn't do. They say that you can't do it. Just like the movie with the women that were working at NASA and doing all the math and doing and how they were treated. They showed some of it in the movie. But when I
Figures.
talked to some
Um,
white folks about that, the first thing they say is, "I didn't know they could do that."
It,
Instead of
it,
saying, "I didn't know they did that," they're
mm,
saying, "I didn't know they
it's like the
could do that."
incompetence. They think that we're too incompetent. So at one point, having a degree was an accomplishment, but now people are seeing it more as a burden because of the amount of debt that goes with it in most
Yeah,
cases.
very
And then
true.
people are paying debt for the rest of their lives on, in some cases, degrees that they don't even use or can't find a significant job in it. And then they end up doing something totally different. And it's so crazy because even when you think about attorneys and doctors, some of them they don't have a choice but to charge an arm and a leg because if they don't, then they won't be able to pay their student loans or do none of the other stuff that they need to do just to be able to have a regular minimum wage type life because them student loans are hindrance and hideous. I would the reason why I'm not going back to get my master's right now is because one, I end up getting all of my loans written off and forgiven. So that was 30,000 worth of debt that I am not trying to go get back in debt to get student loans. And then the other thing is that if I got to pay for it, I'm not doing it. I got away good with them 30,000 that I got forgiven. Ain't going back into debt.
I hear that. I want to talk about a subject well, another subject that kind of irritates me, and it's about these people that get sentenced to 90 days in jail, 60 days in jail, and all of a sudden their life is ended. people that have stormed the Capitol, burned the American flag, assaulted police, some of them are getting no more than 90 days in jail. Now, to me, being a former felon, this is a goddamn insult. Excuse me, am I after dark? Anyway, okay. When you are doing 90 days in jail, you have not been there long enough to take a shower, okay? It takes you 90 days for them to tell you where you're at. Then it takes you another 60 days to get your classification to get a job.
So how long it's been since you've been in jail, Mr. James? Because I don't think the process is quite as long now.
It's been well, okay. Three strike law was passed in under Reagan, so that'll tell you there. I had 4 strikes then. I have not stepped my ass back in jail since. Okay,
Listen, I think that the process it might be a tad bit faster, but I understand what you're saying. And if you're specifically talking about Jesse, his ass talk about he was Tupac at one point, so his ass need to man the hell up and take his butt
wait a
back
minute.
to jail. And it ain't got nothing to do with him being homosexual. He said he felt like he was this generation's Tupac. Nigga, Tupac went to jail and he took that like a man. He ain't cry about it. And he ain't lie about no damn hate crime. That's the stupidest damn lie in the whole history of lies that you could tell and get caught. You gonna fake a whole hate crime. Like, first off, it was too cold to be outside of the first damn place. You did it on the wrong day. If you planned it, you should have replanned it because you planned it on the wrong dang on day. Just what was you thinking? It was too cold. Wasn't nobody outside that day. Nobody was outside. And nobody's going to get Subway at that weather at that time of night. There's just none of those things made sense. Then the Magna hat that didn't even make sense. Then to come to find out, it's 2 African dudes walking down the street at the time that you said 2 white boys, and then you had the noose around your neck at home while you was waiting. So you just sat around for 20, 30 minutes with the noose around your neck, Jesse. I'm appalled. I'm insulted. Because
he got out of jail, didn't he? I read that he got out of jail.
Well, he's out on appeal. He's out on appeal. Now, here's the part that's really kind of sad to me, is that the prosecutor in this case is saying that Jesse's sentence was too long.
No, he need to go to jail. That was a stupid ass fucking. I mean, excuse me. That was the dumbest lie in the history of lies that you could tell. He could have told any other lie but that lie. And then, because it faked a hate crime, it's just so inconsiderate of people like Emmett Till. And then Taraji, I love Taraji. I really do. I really have a genuine love for Taraji since Baby Boy. But guess what, Taraji talking about, well, she comparing that to Emmett Till. That ain't shit like what Emmett Till went through. You can't even put those in the same thing.
No, this guy was just, he had the modicum of fame to be on a regular TV show, to have a regular.
No.
He was no superstar. He thought he was a superstar, Scott. And he's not no superstar.
Okay. The show that Empire, it was one of the best selling or the most watched.
No, it was he was definitely
right.
In a place where he didn't need to do that.
What more do you want? He got a chance to be on that show. Why in the world does he have?
Yeah. He needs to be in the mental hospital. He needs to get a mental evaluation because ain't no way you that successful. You got that much going for yourself. He was just getting new deals. He was just, I mean, like in the brink of all success. And then he didn't go and made up a dumb
he couldn't handle it. Like, he couldn't handle it. He got drunk with it. Thought he was too big. Thought he was bigger.
He didn't know he was going to get caught. Ain't no way he didn't know he was going to get caught. Where was his friends at? He needs some new friends because somebody should have said, Jesse, that does not even make sense. Bruh, are you sure you want to do that? And then you gonna leave the noose around your neck until the police get there. How long did it take for the police to get there with your noose around your neck? Like that would.
Yeah,
I just can't with him.
Miss Sims, we're getting a little feedback from you there, but
You are okay.
I was talking about these so-called fake gangsters, these counterfeit convicts, getting 90 days in jail and complaining. I mean, and we got on the Jesse Smollett case because Jesse is out on appeal uh, of his sentence. Now, personally, I thought he should have been given a whole lot more and set out in general population in Cook County Jail. But that's just the devil in me talking there. But what's your thoughts, Miss Sims? I
Uh,
mean, Mr.
I
Scott says he was drunk with power.
um, I literally had to go and Google who you all were talking about. 'Cause I haven't kept up with that. In the beginning,
That's
when it first came out, all the trouble and things that happened, I kind of kept was up to date on it. But since then, I haven't kept up with it, and so I'm just listening to you all. And before I came on, I literally went back and Googled to see who you all were speaking of it. I kind of remember it was going. I didn't know that it has gone into overtime in terms of a lot of the crap, mysterious things that are going on. It sounds like a three-ring circus. So, and then I came in on Dr. Casey's. I won't say ramp, but her real true how she was really truly and really truly expressing herself. And so I'm just listening.
I
Uh,
could have gave him a better ride than that, and I don't even like liars.
yeah, uh, it sounds like you got your reverb on there, Dr. Casey. What happened?
I said I don't
Okay.
even I could have gave Jesse a better lie than that, and I don't even like lying or liars. I think that's why it pissed me off so bad because I don't like liars. So then for it to be a stupid lie,
uh-oh.
I think that's Miss Sim.
No, it's not Miss Sims. That might be that might be that janky computer, Mister Scott here. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, it wasn't whatever it is. It's gone now. But Mister Scott,
Okay, you said.
go ahead, Doctor Case.
Oh, I was just really talking to my daughter, but I just don't like liars. Period. And then the lie that you're gonna come up with, don't come up with a lie that's like it didn't even make sense. It was just and then the people at the from the Capitol, see, but the thing is you're dealing with a lot of people that's never really they're not really criminals. They just
Wait
try
a
to
minute.
do too
Oh,
much. And now
hold
they
on.
don't know how to deal with the consequences of doing things that they have no business doing in the first place.
Hold on. The first thing they tell you, or one of the first things that you should know, if you're going to be a criminal, is that ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Listen, but with the Capitol riots, what the it wasn't even a insurrection like that because that's only specifically when it's black people trying to do that. It's not for when white people buck the system. It's for when black people buck the system, then they fight back. But they don't know how to respond when it's their own. That's why, in my opinion, it was like, all right, if they gonna tear it up, let them tear it up because we sure couldn't do it. Put it up.
uh, uh, let's kind of go from there, Mr. Scott. Okay, we saw the difference in what happened at the Capitol, January 6th, and what happened when 45 wanted to take a picture of himself with an upside down Bible. So we saw the difference in the way the two things were handled. In fact, the Proud Boy leader, his charges are from burning a Black Lives Matter flag that they ripped down from a church, not his participation in the January 6th riots. Now, I say that because let's look at the way things were handled. And you can go back either to the Black Panther Party, you can go down to the Muslims, the Black Muslim movement with Malcolm X. Uh, we can even talk about the different conspiracy theories involving the assassination of Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers and how these things were handled. We have a white man that killed Medgar Evers that I don't believe did a day in his life until the case was over 40 years old. We have a case right now, uh, the young paramedic and that was killed. I don't believe anyone has been charged with her death yet, but they're just, what they are charged with are firing shots into the apartment next door. So, Mr. Scott, this is why I'm very frustrated here when I start talking about sentencing and the difference between sentencing in, well, not only sentencing but charging when there is a person of color involved and when there is a white person involved, a Caucasian person involved. Mr. Scott, you want to kind of tell me how you look upon this? I mean, like I said, uh, I can even go further. I think we have a man in Kansas that's been in jail for 32 years for a crime that he didn't commit, and they don't want to give him their dollar. Your thoughts on this, Mr. Scott? I mean, you and Miss Sims tell me things have changed. I need a more convincing argument. I'm sorry. You muted there, Miss? I think.
James, I haven't told you any such lie.
Miss Sims, you told me that you could not be charged with having a marijuana cigarette in your car, and you have never had and you never smoked marijuana in your life. You told me that the cops are beneath that. I remember that very distinctly. Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Well, James, to respond to what you're saying, I mean, it's just been a double standard from day one. I mean, the system is corrupt. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, historically they had all the lynchings that they would do. They call it a lynching. Those are murders. Those are crimes. There are pictures that they would take and send postcards around with body. They know who did these things, but it's a lynching, and we don't know. We don't know what happened. So I mean, we just have to face it. The system is corrupt. And then when we get to things of looking like Kamala Harris, people throw darts at her. Oh, she sent all kinds of black people to prison.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk. We're gonna
The
talk
only
about
thing,
that.
in this context, though,
Okay.
see, I've worked with the county, and if they give you 100 cases and it's all black people, somebody's going to go to prison. There are people that are black that need to be in prison. I mean, that's just that. I don't know what that's. But if
when the
you give 100
opportunity is
cases,
there,
if you send some people in, they're guilty. I think you
when
have to really look
when
at the
it's
setup
evidence
here.
available to prove them innocent, then no, she should not be sending their ass to jail.
Exactly,
If it's
exactly.
evident
And I
that
believe,
can,
I believe she follows the process. From what I know,
I
don't
don't.
know her
Okay.
personally. Don't know her
Mr.
personally.
Mr. Scott,
Yeah.
uh,
I ain't vote for no
you
president.
you're a man of numbers. I want you to explain to me how 18% of the population can constitute 46% of the prison population. Are you telling me that white folks don't commit crimes, Puerto Ricans don't commit crimes?
I'm saying the system is corrupt. I'm saying that across the board.
But
Worked
you,
in
but
the
but
system.
but but, but you said specifically black people. There's certain black people belong in jail. There's certain white people that belong in jail
You
also.
doggone right. There are certain people, period, that belong in jail. Well, so I can expand that statement, but I'm just, if
Right,
we were
right.
talking about one idiom, I'm just espousing on that. But yeah, for sure, there are people that, I mean, the criminal justice system is not perfect, and I believe it's corrupt. I believe they do things under the table. I believe these lawyers, I believe they've gone to school with these judges. I believe that there's handshake agreements. I've seen it. I've seen it. But what's the answer? See, that's what I'm looking for, solutions.
Okay, Miss Sims, what are some of the solutions? You've been dealing with a light rail situation for almost over a decade now. What are some of the solutions, and why aren't we included in some of those solutions?
Well, I'm going back to what Mr. Scott was saying. Um, if you put it down to people's behavior, it doesn't matter if they're a purple people eater, if they're doing evil, if they're killing people, if they're coming at me for no reason. I want them out of here. I mean, I want them dealt with in an appropriate manner. So, if you deal with people's behavior and bad behavior, evil behavior, criminal behavior, it covers the board. It doesn't matter what culture you're from or what planet, and you should be dealt with appropriately. I agree with Mr. Scott. People in the system are corrupt. There are people in the system that are corrupt. Now, the whole system, I would say, I would personally have to check in because there are people within the system that I believe aren't corrupt, but they're not speaking up.
So
They're
that make
not.
them corrupt.
Yeah, they're not for whatever reasons. Whether it's whatever. I mean, they're remaining quiet and they're not thinking about. It's kind of like a bully. A bully will bully someone until that person goes away, or until that person stands up to that bully. Now, that bully may stop bullying Mr. Scott. That doesn't mean that his bullying antics have gone away. He's going to turn to Dr. Casey and start bullying her. So you got to deal with people's behavior and who they are, and take them on and be able to, and be willing to, stand up to them. Like here, they keep saying dismantle racism, etc., etc. And I say I disagree with the word dismantle. For me, it's more confront racism, because when you confront something, you face them and you deal with them head on. Because this dismantling racism or anything else, I mean, it's been going on for years and it still hasn't been dismantled. And so it kind of goes underground and comes out with a different face that people don't recognize. But when you confront, like when Dr. Casey was in the military, she she had to confront the enemy with her gun and whatever, ready to deal
Okay,
with them.
okay.
She couldn't just, when she saw them coming and knew they were out there, she just didn't turn her back and cut tail and run
Hide
behind a
behind the
bush.
car.
but
She may
but
have wanted to, but she had to. I mean, her life was on the line. She had to deal with what was there.
I
but
went to fight.
Miss Sims, you know, I understand kind of where you're coming from,
Hmm.
but number one, when you talk about the bully, okay, like you say, he might stop bullying Mr. Scott, but what about all those other people that enabled him? If they're still encouraging him by their not discouraging him,
Hmm.
they're giving validity to his actions. Aren't we doing the same when we have elected officials that have been in the same job for 30 years or more, and we keep putting them in office? Aren't they also guilty of perpetuating the same crimes? And aren't we
Yes,
also guilty by keep putting these damn people in office?
our behavior then comes across as supporting those corrupt people, those bullies, etc.,
Stockholm
etc.
syndrome.
And here again is where politics take on many faces. A lot of people don't realize that in regards to um, this, they don't see how politics and voting connects to the judges that are sentencing people. They don't realize that when you vote, a lot of the judges and the attorneys and in those offices, that there are people that go unchallenged year after year. Those people are also part of the system that Mr. Scott is talking about, and they need to be out of there also. But people are connecting how politics and their vote will help get them out of there, or are connected. A lot of people up here don't, I believe, don't even take the time to find out who a lot of these judges or prosecutors are in regards to when they go to vote. So they only vote with who are they familiar with. And this is one way, as you're saying, Mr. Scott, that people perpetuate the bullies and the people that are already that are corrupt in the system. This is one way how our behavior, supports them, keep them in office. And when we're not taking time to find out, let's look at this guy. Let's see what's going on here.
But even if you look at them, if it's nobody in competition to go
Yeah.
against them, it doesn't even make a difference. You could between that and then you're talking about a lawlessness in a sense, but you're talking about the people who created the same laws that you're saying that you won't change. So in order for a change to happen, it can't be made by the same people who created them because they don't see anything wrong with how it's been the last
Yeah.
50,
Yeah.
60, 70 years. They think that everything is perfect. It's the new people that's like, wait a minute, you don't see how evolution of the whole world has changed and this needs to change
Hmm.
too. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're not gonna change. It's like the police policing themselves. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
gonna police themselves appropriately. They're gonna always make it look like in their favor.
Yeah. And you speaking of how Mr. King is one of the mysteries he blames on. I mean, Mr. Scott is how Mayor Fry is still in office, and that's one. And you spoke, Dr. Casey spoke to it when you're people, the candidates are running. You have to look to see who's out there, and it could be bad, better, and baddest person out there, and you have to, uh, uh, if you're gonna vote it or try to do right, your choices, the choices that are out there. And sometimes, I mean, you have to hold your nose, or try to think of who's going to do the least damage, or if you vote them in office, what you're going to do to try to get them out of office. And so you have to be very, discerning and think about the things that you do, our behavior and politics and voting and whatever else.
Well,
Jacob
because
Fry's
we
going to
don't
be in
really
there
get good
forever.
choices. We don't really get good choices. I mean, a lot of times it's voting for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
the lesser of two evils, the devil you know. I mean,
yeah,
it's really come down to here we've got a guy going against he wants to take Ilhan seat.
I was
Don
just
Samuels.
thinking of him, Don Samuels.
Don Samuels.
I'm just he just coming
He's
on the screen there, and I have to think about him.
and so he wants to be in, but what's his background? I mean, we
Yeah,
should still look at everybody, what regardless of who they are, what
yeah,
their background is, what do they know, what
right,
are they going to
right,
do? We have to
right,
vet these people, and I don't
right,
see that happening. I mean, I see people
right.
being put in because maybe their sexual preference is something, or their
Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
they're
yeah,
doing
Not,
things that
oh,
really to me have
We're
nothing
in the
with
I
doing
agree.
the job, with
I
showing
agree.
me that you
For
can do
me,
the
I think
job.
it's time
Show
for
me you can do
Ilhan
it.
to go. Yeah, I think it's time for Ilhan to go. But who's gonna replace her?
okay, now
we're in the
hold
we're
on,
in the
hold on, because there seems to be a real disconnection between the black community in the Twin Cities and the Somalis group in the in the Twin Cities. I've heard everyone, well, not everyone, but most of the people that I've talked to within the Twin Cities have some type of beef with Ilion. Now, let's kind of examine this, okay? In your neighborhoods, the black neighborhoods, the Somalis came in and took over the taxi business. The black people could have done the same thing. They took that business and made it into a political base that was very successful because you have a minority that has a bigger voice in your city than you have had in the last 25 years. So, is this jealousy because the black community did not make the strides that the Somali community has made? Because I remember as I told you, I remember when I came home from the penitentiary the second time, and every 7-Eleven in my neighborhood was owned by someone that had an Egyptian or Jordanese, some type of Arabian name that I could not pronounce. They had papers that I could not read. And we did the same thing. Oh, they're taking over our community. Oh, they're eroding the tax base. Oh, they're taking this money away from our community. But these were missed opportunities within the black community themselves. So, Mr. Scott and Miss Sims, why do you think it's so important for Ilion Omar to go when your black community does not have a viable alternative?
We do have a viable alternative. She
Name it.
she
I've
needs
been
to
on.
go because she's not doing anything. She's not doing anything for all the people. She's doing stuff for people that don't
She's
know.
Somali. She was voted in by the
Exactly.
Somali
That's my point.
community.
That's my point. That's my point. We have Somalis on our city council. We have a guy left the city council to go to run the Minneapolis Housing Authority, a Somali, and he puts another Somali in his seat. Okay. Now they come from an area where do they have housing authorities there? Do they have Section 8 there? Do they have the type of housing and infrastructure and things we're working on? No, they don't. But they would rather have the puppetry. See, puppetry is a huge thing. Rather than have us that's going to help our people do something, they'd rather pit us against each other, is really what they're doing. Because Ilhan has never shown any affinity that I've seen for the Twin Cities black community, the historical black community. And she's in the area 5, which is my area. And no, I didn't vote for her. And then we had another guy come into the state council, Omar Fatah, 22 years old, been here a year or two, and I want somebody like that representing me? I don't think so. But the Democratic Party, the money, the they are flipping the script on this thing with their money. They're doing everything they can. Anybody but a black person. Anybody but a black person is the way I look at it from the outside. And I believe she needs to go. I believe there's enough baggage. There's enough there to say why this is the best you can do. This is the best. No, it's not the best. We can do better, but we
Yeah,
have some
Uh,
candidates
I
in
agree.
public. Yeah.
I'm right there with Mr. Scott, Miss Sims. You can do better, but you haven't, and you are not doing any better now. Where is so? Why not take advantage of a coalition? Why not go to the Somali community rather than dismiss the Somali community and say, we don't need them. Let's get her out of there.
It's kind of like a war type of a thing. They're aligned more with the Somali community than they are the black community. I mean, they really
So you
don't
don't
want to see us do it.
so you don't
They
think
don't
that
want
they
to
have
see that.
both y'all best interests that are our best interests at heart as well?
That's a going to the Somali community is a strategy, Mr. King. This, and I've thought about this over the years. The system has been set up to
Just got
pit
here.
the cultures against each other in regards to favoring one of over the other.
Then break
Black
the
people,
chain. Then break the chain instead of keep adding links to it.
that is true. Who's gonna step forward to do that? Then you have
Why
to
not you and Mr. Scott?
that
Well, I mean, it's a start. It takes at least one participant to make a race.
and it
I mean,
takes
two.
and it
Excuse
takes
me.
a strategy. It takes people that are going to support you and help you move your agenda along. To me, part of that the black Somali type of conversations has started long ago in regards to uh, looking at the immigration policies of and I haven't looked at them for years in regards to when we bring immigrants to this country, what is there to support them? What is there? Who's there to support them? There's money there to support them. There are people in various places that are going to support them in regards to doing various things. And a lot of times it turns out on the surface it looks for as these supporters are or all for whoever they're going to whoever they're uplifting. Years ago when in my um, in my community organization I was listening to some back then it was like the Latino culture that was real in the news then, and a lot of the Latino culture people were coming over, finding jobs, doing this and that. And I was listening to two organizers at one meeting, and they were saying how, and it made sense. They were saying how they were comparing the various cultures of immigrants that were coming over, and they said, well, the Latino community have in place the Catholic Church, the Catholic structure. So when they come in regards to a lot of things that the Catholic Church is and whatever, help promote them and support them. Whereas other immigrants, they kind of struggle because they didn't already have that structure in place, so they had to build a structure or rely on someone else. And that was true because at the time, even the organization that I was working with, we were supporting a lot of the Latinos having stores and things like that. And so a lot of the political structure and the system are in place to have immigrants replace black folk. Even now, when I've gone to the hospital, I was in a hospital for 2 weeks, for over a week in aftercare for 2 weeks. And the only black person I saw was my daughter and my son. And you had a changeover of nurses and whatever
Yeah.
all day long. Now there was a lot of the people that were coming in were from the continent of Africa community. I don't know whether they were Somalis, East Africans, or whatever. But that that particular the medical community at that level. And I wonder I wonder now, where are the black people going? Where are they? And I look around me in stores and whatever. Where are the black people? And unless we step forward and start voicing and saying, hey, what's going on here, recognize what's going on here, we are, slowly, the system is slowly doing away with us. And one of the
I'll
things
just give
back,
you.
and
Wait,
one
I
of
want
the
to give
things
you
back,
one big example.
hold on, Mr. Scott. Let her finish making a point. Then we'll come to you. Go ahead, Mr.
one
Scott.
of the things back then when the example I gave of the Latina community, one of the things where the industry and Wall Street supported the Latina community to come in because the black folk and white folks were saying no to some of the things that say the employers wanted to do. They want the established communities already knew that we couldn't live on less than $10 an hour or struggling to pay rent or whatever. Whereas a lot of the immigrant communities that come in, they aren't familiar with how this United structure is set up, et cetera, and how they are being exploited in some ways by the Wall Street and whoever because they will work for cheaper wages and stuff, that they are considered most favored. But one of the things that will happen over time as the Latina community got enculturated and did get used to what's going on, they found themselves in the same situation as the black folk and lower income people in the terms of the struggles that we were experiencing. And so I don't know, maybe they look back and see how they were used, but we were pitted against, the cultures are pitted against one another, and that's happening now to in my opinion, regarding the continent of Africans and the American Africans in terms of who's most favored, who's going to be supported in political positions, and they're being used by a lot of the establishments and stuff.
Mr. Scott, I don't know. Maybe you might be one of those people up in Minnesota with your head in the sand and stuck down in the ground or something. But
If you let you tell it, if you let
well,
James King tell it, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
because there's 3 million, over 3 million Ukrainians refugees in Europe right now. If you don't think that some of those people are coming to Minnesota, like I said,
They're
you
already
have
here.
to, okay, even more so. Now, if you as black people do not unite, don't you think that those new immigrants and the already established government are going to make things even tougher for you?
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
They're not just coming. They're not just coming to Minnesota. They're
I
coming to
understand that.
California. They're
I
coming to
understand that.
Georgia. They're coming to
But,
this
with-
country. Period.
but,
They're
with-
coming to
but,
this country. Period.
with
Okay. So
yes,
I
yes, they
understand
are.
that.
Yes, they are. And
Yeah.
believe it or not, when they get to California, some of them are going to marry these Mexicans. Some of them are going to marry these Vietnamese. What I'm saying to you is, if you do not unite, how can you expect for you not to be swallowed up by these other
Well, that's a true
these other
statement.
signs of
That's a,
immigration?
that's a very true statement. And the point that I was going to make is that I just came back from a funeral. A longtime person that I knew that went to our church for many years, and it was at a funeral home in North Minneapolis. And here in the Twin Cities, we talk about Minneapolis, St. Paul. You got one black funeral home in Minneapolis. You got one black one in St. Paul. Period. Okay. And
We got a
so
whole lot of them in
that's
San Diego, so not that we need
well,
them. I mean, not that we want them, but we got a whole
I
lot of them
know,
here in San
but
Diego.
I'm
I
saying
would be glad to live
that's
in a city where we only have one.
that's a mirror into looking into in this, of one industry that we are just less than 1% of 0.00% of that industry. And I agree. Until we educate, until we get in and learn how to do these things, which they're always moving the goalposts for us, for everybody. They continue to move the goalposts. The things when this country started, to be a lawyer, all you had to do was work with somebody that was a lawyer. That's all you had to do. There was no schools. There wasn't no law schools. There wasn't any of that. All you had to do was be connected with somebody that came over here from England that said they were a lawyer, went to some school over there that who knows whether they did or not back then. And then they began to start this trail of medicine. I got a good friend, a doctor in Long Beach, California, Dr. Henry Johnson. His father was a doctor. He couldn't get in the University of Minnesota Medical School. He had to go to Meharry and go down to Mexico to become a doctor. They wouldn't let him in the University of Minnesota. And now he's a thriving practice in Long Beach, California. But I mean, these are the obstacles that are there. And I'm not saying that, everybody, we have to deal with. It's a gauntlet that Black people have to run through in this country. Minnesota,
And
Minnesota being on the map. Yeah.
And I think we're talking about, in looking back, how the system that has been in place for years has been successful in disseminating Black folk as a culture and as a entity and as supporting each other. Because years ago, I learned that, especially when my children were in school, I learned that even in the immigrant camps before they come over to America, they had been indoctrinated not to associate it with Black folk when they came here. They were taught, and this came from some Somali women and others' mouths as I sat and listened to them. They were cautioned to stay away from Black folk. We were the evil, etc., etc. And a lot of times when the immigrants did come over, maybe if they were Somalis were the first wave, even during the school system, a lot of the white teachers and whomever were in charge parent organization, they would say a lot of the Somalis in filling out papers would put down that they were white. Here again, to avoid what they've been told of the evil of Black folk and etc. etc. Years ago, my friend Vivian Jenkins Nelson, she's a professor at Oxford. She had was conducting a workshop of Somali women and Black women. That's how and it kept coming across my desk. And so I started going to a meeting, and there were mostly Somali people and women there and a few Black folk. And that's where we found out that we had been, they told us, that we were told to stay away from you all. And I said, well, we were told the same thing, to stay away from you all, etc., etc. So systems are in place already, been in place to get the results that we are now seeing. And you're right, unless Black folk recognize it, first you have to recognize it, then you have to think about what are you going to do with it, how are you going to deal with it. And this how comes into place where the political persons are, do we choose Ilhan? And I say she's got to go based on what she's doing politically or not doing, or do we choose Don Samuels, who's we got to think about where he's coming from, where that choice is. And like Dr. Casey's saying, you got to be careful of who you're picking and choosing, of strategies and going in force. And when my children were in high school, was the first they were talking about. I remember being in a meeting with a lot of the staff in regards to development. I was one of the first wave of parents that, through our organizing, came up with a lot of the parent councils and stuff now in place. And I remember they were talking about a lot of the Somali population and students that were coming over, and the immigrants, and I said, look, I'm not an immigrant, so I can't relate to some of the things you're talking about. And then that's when I heard someone use, well, you are an involuntary immigrant. You didn't come over as a
I never.
slave or your heritage. You are an involuntary. That's how they described black folk at that time, an involuntary immigrant. And I had never heard that term
I,
before.
I would rather be called that than a Negro, but that's a different case. But anyway, uh, Dr. Casey, divide and conquer has been a strategy since the book of Genesis. If you
Hmm.
start back at the back, so I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, I hate to say it, but if people of my and Miss Sims and Mr. Scott's generation have been so bamboozled by these fireworks shows, for instance, Juneteenth, Black History Month, uh, 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 Equal Opportunity Act, all of this stuff that has been thrown at us, but has never been successful. And a lot of that, has the system failed us, or have we not learned how to play within the system?
Both. Um, so the system is designed to not support us. It can't fail us because it wasn't designed to push us forward in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It was designed for those who are benefiting from it to benefit from it, and those that who were not and who were not written in to benefit to not benefit. However, in addition to that, we have kind of been rocked to sleep, largely, even now, because it's still people, young people my age, that as soon as something happened that looked like, sparkly lights and it's wrapped in something cute, then they just forget about whatever issue they was just mad about. And it is very frustrating because we have become comfortable with leaving our lives in other people's hands. And because we are comfortable leaving our lives in other people's hands, we don't get the best quality of life that we could have. Um, so it's a dual failure. It's a failure on our part not to say, okay, now what are we doing to move forward? And then having enough balls to actually do it despite what comes against us. The only thing is everybody that did it before got killed. So, um, for our generation, um, it sometimes look like a lot isn't happening, but we've learned to move a different way so that we don't get killed. So it's kind of, like one of those catch 22s because normally people don't understand when you're doing it. Like when Jay-Z went and sat with the NFL, everybody just was like, he sell out, he doing this, and then it turns out that he was actually getting a foot in the door so that we could do what we want to do. In every demographic, it takes for somebody to get their foot in the door in order to manipulate the system, and it's not a manipulation. The real manipulation is knowing the loopholes that they pull over on you. The goal in anything, and I learned this mostly from dealing with the VA, they're banking on you not knowing. When it comes to veterans doing claims, they're banking on you giving up in the process. As soon as they deny you, if you give up, you don't fight no more. So they know they ain't got to give you nothing. So they deny you the first time just to see you really
Yeah.
hungry or you just a little hungry. And then most people don't reapply. They don't say, you know what, I want somebody else to look at this, because they just take, okay, well, they just said, and then they go along with it. And it's the same thing. Instead of going through the process and learning exactly what it is that you need to know so that you can get the exact results that you're trying to get, um, they run game on us, and until we learn the game enough, it's like in the Bible. They tell you all the fancy scriptures first, and divide and conquer didn't happen in the back of the Bible. It happened way in the front with Adam and Eve,
It was
when
Genesis.
when the thought process, because let's just be honest. First and foremost, if Adam and Eve were equal, they would both come from the ground. Adam technically was supposed to have had another wife, Lilith, who didn't want to submit to Adam. So she ran off, and then Adam was like, "That woman that you gave me, she wasn't, and I need another one." So that's when Adam got Eve from his rib, because the one that came from the dirt like him didn't want to follow and obey. This is the story. You can go research it on your own. It's a story called Lilith. It's Adam's first wife. So
Ain't nobody came from a rib from nobody.
I mean,
Well,
that's kind of like
that,
Jesus and the sperm. Like,
yeah,
Jesus
come on,
can't be a real
see,
Jesus without
see,
the sperm.
I'm gonna get back into those little church discussions for you, Mr. Scott. Don't worry, but
But
I've seen how kids come into this world. I've seen how people come in this world. They come from no rib.
so, well, technically, Mr. Scott, a living organism only has to find something to live within in order for it to be able to be born into. So, if you put semen in any type of structure where it can grow and it can
inside
build the body out,
inside of a fertile substance.
it don't have to be a human. It
No,
don't
no,
have to be.
that's why I said a fertile substance.
So yeah, you can technically live without coming the traditional way. It's just not gonna be a normal person.
Right,
But
right.
it started way back when, and even in then, I think I talked about this before. They called Lilith the dark angel. It was like a whole bunch of things that's associated with darkness, which everything that they
Most
associate with darkness
most
is
people don't
normally
have time
bad.
to read those books unless they're incarcerated or that's their
See,
particular field of.
well, goes back to my point, which was um most people, they only highlight and pull out what they want to use. So if you don't know the rest of it, then knowing the little part that you do know, it really defeats the purpose, because you don't know enough to really be strong in it. It's almost like when it's the Bible says, study to show yourself approved. um that don't mean study just the Bible. That means study everything that made the Bible. Because guess what? It's a lot of stuff that contributes to what's actually in the Bible and then what wasn't in the Bible. Because like, just it's just a lot. So even with that, when you think about it like that, the
Well,
less that you know, the better it is for the people that know more. It's just like pastors be knowing more about history sometimes than what they put off on. But if they tell you everything that they know, then guess what? They ain't in control no more, because now you know what they know. So it's about finding the loopholes. So the divide and conquer part is really just a matter of who knows the information so that you're not divided. Because it's easy to be divided if you don't know. If you have no clue about what's going on, then you're going to be separated from the people that know something. Ignorance will never be fond of intelligence as long as ignorance is comfortable being ignorant.
Mr. Scott, I want to I know Brother Williams is going to be here pretty soon, him and Honeybee. But I want to talk to you about someone that you mentioned a little earlier,
Hmm.
and that's the Vice President, Miss Kamala Harris. Now, like I said, I moved out here in 2003, so I'm kind of familiar with Kamala Harris and her work. Now, I have a problem because, as I said in the little thing that I sent out to everyone, she put a lot of black folks in jail out here in LA, uh, being district attorney of LA County. And she ran on the platform of being tough on criminals, tough on immigrants. And when you look at what she has done and since Biden has been in office, she hasn't really been in the
Doing everything.
forefront. She's actually been, like kind of doing busy work, if
Mhm.
understand what I mean by that. But two things I'd like to for you to discuss, Mr. Scott. One, how much trust do you have in Kamala Harris as being a proponent of black people and black legislation? And number two, if it had not have been for 45, do you think that she and Joe Biden would be in office right now?
Can I say something before he starts? Just so I can say
Please
something.
do. Please do. Please do.
They wouldn't have been in office at all first. Um, and then lost what I was going to say. So just go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Well, as far as Kamala Harris's overall record, I mean, I'm not, as up on it as I will be. But for me to believe that she has a vendetta and that she got in office to just take out black men, it's hard for me to believe that. But
I
it's
did
easy.
not say
It's
it.
easy.
I did not say that she had a vendetta.
Well,
Who
I'm
said
just.
that, Mr. Scott?
So I want to know where you read that or where you got, because I did not say that she had a vendetta.
But she
I
has.
said I said that she ran as being tough on crime.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Now there's, how you specifically narrowed it down. That's your logic.
Okay.
But
So
anyway,
that was an erroneous statement I made. That was
okay,
totally
all right.
erroneous. Totally erroneous. So no, what
Do
is
you
this a
want
person?
fries or shake with that pigeon that you just had to swallow? But anyway, go ahead.
No, no. Uh-uh. I mean, I saw what was coming through, but I mean, I don't know that much about her record. Would I vote for her as president? Do I think she's up for that job? Well, that's something that is to be determined, I guess. We'll see what happens. I mean, Biden, he just seems like any day, he, I another term for Biden, I guess I don't see that. I don't see it. And so she's the vice president. So there's always the thought that that would be the next person. So do I believe that she has any type of, they say that she's locked up a lot of, I think you did say she locked up a lot of black people. Didn't you say that, James? Or was that
I said,
erroneous
I
too? I
said,
didn't hear.
no. I said she locked up a lot of blacks and minorities. I didn't.
Okay,
I did.
blacks
I
and
didn't.
minorities.
Yeah,
Blacks and minorities. So
I
my
didn't
statement
exclude.
on that again is it's hard for me to believe that that's a purposeful thing that she's done. It's like I was saying, if she's assigned certain cases, if she's assigned all black cases, and some of those people go to prison, uh,
She's the
there's a
L.A.
system.
district.
So
Not
She's
here.
the
There's a
L.A.
system.
Oh, hold on, Mr. Scott. She's the L.A. district attorney. She's not assigned nothing.
right. And then if
She
she's
ta-
not
she takes the cases that she wants.
I
She is
understand that.
she is not that's just like like Mr. Fry with his no knock. Same thing.
and if she is
Well,
choosing not to submit all the evidence that's available that can turn somebody innocent, then that's a problem.
it is
But
a problem.
so
And if
what I
that
was
has happened, you're doggone right. I have no idea about how she has adjudicated some of those cases and what she's seen. and what she's used to adjudicate the case. I don't know. I really
So
don't.
what I was gonna say earlier is that I think that Kamala was used as a pawn in order to get the black vote, largely because really, honestly, she is not seen a lot. She's like you said, doing busy work, and aside from getting a black vote, I don't see the purpose of it. But it's a she was definitely a great tool in order to get black people to vote. Definitely black women, if that's what you need in order to win.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
they were successful at that part. But I didn't vote for nobody for the president. I voted everything else but the president because I already knew they was gonna be some bull and that Trump was already on some, wishy washy bull as far as the best interest for everybody. But I love again what Trump did as far as exposing people and making people comfortable enough to come out of hiding.
Miss Sims, what's your thoughts on Kamala Harris?
Well, I like Mr. Scott. I'm not familiar with her background there in San Diego as her job there, as her job as vice president. Uh,
No,
that
not San Diego, Los Angeles
I
County.
mean Los Angeles
Don't,
back in
yeah, don't do
California.
that. Yeah, don't
Uh,
do that to us. We bad enough already.
and
Go ahead.
see, it always amazes me, Mr. King, how you know a lot about Minnesota. What's going on here that you talk about and bring up this
I'm
back
on your
back that way?
I'm on your show every Saturday.
Okay, but Don show, okay,
Yeah,
but
and contrary to popular belief, I'm gonna do my research.
right, and I can't remember how you and I connected, but anyway, in regards to her being in the vice presidential role, you have to think about what a vice presidential role is, and a lot of them are like doing busy work in there, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the vice president that exerts themselves and pushes themselves, I would imagine they'd have to be real strong and adamant in what they're doing to make sure that their role is more than just doing busy work. That would take some doing, and I agree with when, as Dr. Casey was saying, you go back to what I've said before that all politics involve three things: a strategy, power, and control. You have to have a strategy to um, keep your power or put power in place to control other things. And of course, she was the strategy to get the black vote was her. I mean, there was a list of people, black folk, as I remember, and she rose to the top. So that's the strategy that they went with, and they felt they would go with it because they felt that that was the one that they would win with, and they were correct. So we can't ever forget about what makes up politics, those three things, and you have to know what you're doing and think about politics. The bottom line of politics, and I tell people and say that a lot of people still think that being president and a presidential election is the most important office in regards to when you vote. But as I said before, it's like a team thing in terms of the legislative branch, the judicial, and executive branch. And the judicial branch, which is like the Supreme Court and stuff, those people are in there for life. If they live to be 200 years old, they're still in there. They can either be doing damage or be doing good.
We're gonna talk a little bit about that too, Miss Sims.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay. There you go. That I I'm finished.
okay. Mr. Brother Williams, I
Yes,
gotta
sir.
ask you. I gotta ask you here because Kamala Harris never came out and said, "If you don't vote for me, you're not voting for black people."
Black people, right?
Kamala Harris never said that. Unless maybe I missed it somewhere. Maybe she did.
Mm-mm.
So I what's your thought on this Kamala Harris debacle here or
Well,
debate? Excuse me.
well, my position is, I just see seeing her as being a pawn, like it was said earlier, to get the Democratic vote. And I definitely agree that if there wasn't for a Donald Trump, you would not have had a Joe Biden and Harrison in office. But at the same time, I don't think you would have had Trump if it wasn't for Barack Obama. So all we're still dealing with is the backlash of racism in terms of how people, the white nationalists rallied around Trump as a result of having Barack Obama in office, as if he was really an African shining star. It had nothing to do with that. It was a It's a symbology of a black man in the highest office. So from that standpoint, the white nationalists and the Klan and just the supremacists had been fueling the whole time he's in office. Uh, you know, KKK membership went up, and everything on in that situation was powder kegging. So now you had a Trump. As a result of the backlash of Trump, it allowed a Joe Biden and Harris to be able to be elected. And I don't look at I never she's not a politician. Bottom line, this is not her lane. And every time she speaks, you can hear it. She is not fit to be in the forefront, which is why they suppress that to keep from her embarrassing herself. And again, I just really feel like it was just a puppeteer play to put her in that position. I don't see anything else, and I do not see her being in there as a second term. I just don't think they gonna do it. In fact, I think I said it on our last show. I felt like big that it was more to it than her. And to me, it's not really a knock on her. It's just a knock on the system. Because the way I look at the system, they intentionally put somebody in that position to suppress black people from having somebody that really should have belonged in that position. And to me, that's the unfortunate truth. And I'm gonna let Humblebee speak more on it.
Yeah, Humblebee, give us a different take on this from someone of even a younger generation than Dr. Casey.
We're speaking on Kamala Harris being in office.
Uh,
I jumped in a little late.
Kamala Harris being in office, the whole reason why she's there, and is she electable as a president in 2024?
I 100% feel that it's a puppet show. They put her in there to to make it seem like they actually are listening to black people, although she's done nothing for the black community. I've seen her in multiple interviews and stuff like that with I mean her professionalism is not that great. Most recent um press conference I saw, I understand Joe Biden, he says things that makes absolutely no sense, but as a politician, your job is to keep a straight face. And there was a video where he was saying something that made absolutely no sense, and she literally, you can see her kind of like mouth it, like what did he say? So I mean, with her, I don't know, she's just, I feel like they just put her in there just to say, okay, here you go, your first black vice president. Now you guys can shut up.
You see, now I also feel that way about our first nominee, as our first black woman nominee to the Supreme Court,
Yep,
and
I was gonna say that.
and
Same.
the reason why I feel this way is because those Supreme Court justices have nothing to do with the police that you confront on your daily basis. By the time something gets to the Supreme Court, it has either been widely publicized or something that is just widely notorious. So once again, I'm wondering whether this is just a political ploy to throw black people off the real problems. Our local sheriffs, police, and judicial system. It starts at home, not at the top. What's your thoughts on this push for a black political woman as a Supreme Court justice? Now, I'm not saying that this is not a good idea, but I'm just saying the timing of it just seems rather peculiar to me. Honeybee, and then Dr. Casey.
I 100% agree with you. One thing that they are really good at is um, when there's something going on in the background, they throw something else in front of you to attract your attention. So for them to have the first black female Supreme Court, I don't know who she is. I mean, of course, we've seen videos and everything like that. But what I really want to see in there is, if you want to put a black woman in there, why not put a black woman who has a black son, who has gone through some things, so that we're putting someone who understands. But then also another thing that you mentioned is, by the time it makes it to Supreme Court, it's already been washed through media, which means it's also been washed through police reports as well. So a lot of things have already been erased. A lot of things are not being reported the correct way. So I mean, to put a black woman in that position, okay, cool, that's nice. We 2022, we're still making first black this, first black that, first black female at that. But at the same time, why not put the first, like, I don't, it's so many frustrations when it comes to it, because it's just like, we have the first black this, first black that. What about putting on the police force a black woman who went through losing their black son to police brutality, to get out there and do the real police work and stop chasing after innocent black men, innocent black women? Well, let's start there. So that way, when it gets up to the Supreme Court, it makes more sense, in my
Now,
opinion.
now, Dr. Casey, she has had a family member that's been incarcerated before. And she's also had a family member that is, I believe, if he's not a police chief, he's a police captain. So she has had family on both sides. But as I'm saying, shouldn't our first preference be to settle our local problems rather than try to start at the top at the Supreme Court?
Absolutely.
S- So, it's hard to speak on that particular portion as far as with the police chief and all of that, because um they're not going to mess up their agenda. That's first and foremost. So they're not going to mess up their agenda. Let's put that at the top. But then when when I think about having somebody in office or somebody there that has had a son brutalized by the position, um I you wasn't here the day that I was talking about it, but when my uncle got killed by the police and my grandmother went to talk to the police chief about it, they told her car. They were like, she's talking to them like we sitting here in a meeting, and they was outside towing the car that she came in while she's talking about her son getting killed. And right now, like literally, there are no reports of anything. So that's a hard ask because they don't want to face their own issue. They're going to deny that they did it. And a lot of the problem is that the laws allow for them to deny. So when you talk about people getting slapped on the wrist, it's the way the laws are written that allows them to get slapped on the wrist, because if you know how to use your words correctly, then you go back to that loophole that I was talking about, where I can just say it like this. And even if it's just a little bit different, if I say it like this and I'm the person of authority, quote unquote, then they're going to take my word for it. So all of those things play into it. As far as the lower level. Now, when you talk about the upper level, um, the Supreme Court thing, Right now, we're in a time period and era where people are not making history because history needs to be made by doing actionable things. People want to make history by being the first person to do this. So it's the first transgender this, and the first lesbian this, and the first gay this, and the first Muslim that, and the first black person this, and the first, and it's a whole lot of people fighting that want to be first. Oh, I'm gonna make history. I'm gonna be in the history books with this, and I'm gonna be the first person that did this. Instead of, I'm gonna do this, and if it makes history, then great, kudos, because I did this and it made history. But when you get people that's doing it to be mentioned in the history books, but not really, it's like I want to be famous, but I'm not doing anything with integrity. So even if I get famous, it kind of defeats the purpose because my integrity is shot. So don't nobody fool with me anyways. I just got a title, but there is no substance. And a lot of things are lacking substance. Even when you think about Kamala being a more of a I don't want to call her specifically a puppet because the reality is when you run for office, you think you got more power than you're gonna get when you get in that office. And then when you get in that office, that shit slap you in the face, and you be like, God damn, I can't do shit that I told these people I was gonna do because I don't really get that much power for real. And that's what it happens. But I think about a couple weeks ago, Kamala and Biden were at some event and they were super far apart and they was looking at each other all crazy, like they was beefing on the low. And a lot of it is that they don't really want a black woman to be strong and in that type of position. And then when they put one in there, she probably got a little bit of an attitude and she used to being a DA, so she's used to handling things a certain way because DAs don't move like politicians. they
Right.
they move totally different because her job is to argue her point. That's not really what politicians do in the way that a DA does it. So there is going to be a little bit of bumping heads because you got that strong black woman personality who has fought her way to the top, regardless if she did shady shit to get to the DA position. She fought her way there. So her mentality is still gonna be different than old Joe. And um even when Obama won, Joe was a good puppet because he needed a white man. Just like Kamala is a good puppet because she married to a white man. So it's like giving everybody a little bit of what they want, but really not giving us nothing. It's like PPP loans or grant. If you qualify for the grant, but I'm gonna really give you this loan and make you think it's a grant so I can do it back. It's just the tricks that they play, and it's the way that they word it to where you don't even realize that they about to pull the wool over your eyes because you like, oh shoot, party time, and then the whole time you didn't. The roof is on fire and the house done burned down and you in there, oh, and then you missed the whole hook.
As we're talking about um, the political arena, we're talking about the strategy. The strategy right now is to keep Democrats in charge of the goings on, the running of the country versus the Republicans. And so part of the strategy to keep Democrats in place is to choose people that are going to help you stay in power or gain power. And as far and if that's part of that strategy is to name a black female to the Supreme Court, and the strategy is you got to stop to think what the strategy is. Then that's the way that you're going to go. One of the things that I'm looking for, if you're going to the Supreme Court, I don't care who you are, I want you to know what you're doing. I want you to be strong as can be in the legal profession because we are in a battle. I want a warrior that's gonna go in there and deal with who and what's taking place. I always cringe when I hear people that are running for office saying that they're not politicians. Hell, that defeats the purpose. Yeah, I want a politician in there who knows what they're doing, who knows the name of the game, who knows the players and how they play the game, because I want you on your number one game. So when you go in there, ready for battle. You don't have to sit back and learn the system and wonder who's doing what, etc., etc. And Mr. Williams made a good point. He said, I hadn't thought about it, that Kamala wasn't a politician, and he's right. She came from the legal, I believe, environment. So to me, she's in there. She's learning the system. I don't want someone. We don't have time when you're at war for people to learn how to shoot that gun. Yes, they're supposed to have taught you how to,
Question,
like
Miss
Mr.
Sims.
Casey did back in boot camp. You're supposed to already know when they send your butt to the battlefield. You already know. You're supposed to know what to do. And so
Miss Sims.
it turns me off when I say people say that they're not a politician. Hell,
But
that defeats the
Miss
purpose.
Sims,
Yeah.
how do you change the makeup of what we see as politicians if you keep putting
without.
people in there that's just politicians and all they know is
Yeah, I agree
politicians
with
and
that.
how to play that game? In
You
order
do
to
your
really
you do
no, hold on, Miss Sims.
okay.
In order to change the game, you got to get people that's tired of the political games and not playing politicians. Anybody can go in there and play a politician and start lying and just talking out the side of their neck to get their point and get what they want. That's knowing the game. The
Yeah.
the reason why we are stuck is because I don't want this to sound disrespectful, but it goes back to something that we were talking about earlier, is that people think like what you're saying. We don't want nobody new. We want somebody that already no, we need new people. The problem is it's no new people. It's a whole bunch of people doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's a continuous cycle until the way you break the cycle of a generational curse, political curse, damn, any type of curse is for it to break. And now you got to get something new going on. In order to shift it, you got to change the direction. So you need people that's fresh, people that's not
But
gonna play those political
That's
games,
what
people that's
that's
gonna
let,
come
one
in
let,
and
that's
let,
play and do
one
let
way.
those
me
That's
things.
let me say this.
one way of dealing with it.
Hold on. Let Brother Williams go in, and then
I,
because I got something I want to discuss with you and Mr. Scott and Mr. Sims. Go ahead,
I
Brother Williams.
I would just say, in order to rephrase my perspective, is that I do not see her as ever being politically astute. Let me put it that way. In other words, not somebody that knows how to navigate and operate within the political arena, and somebody that is actually vast on their knowledge of the political system. She just doesn't come across as somebody that's prepared and capable of dealing with that kind of scenario. I completely agree with Dr. Casey in terms of the best way to shake up the system, as well as within the Black Panther Party. We always talk about that we want people to rise up from the ranks of the community, of the grassroots that are running for office, so that we can change the narrative. And saying that, and then I'm gonna be quiet. I do agree with the nominee Jackson being in there because of her being black. My position is I don't expect a lot to happen at that level. Going back to what James says, but what I do like about this scenario is that I look at it, and I would hope that we have opportunities for that to inspire more black people to get involved in the political system and get involved in the governing. I rather just say the governing of our environment, so that, for instance, on a localized level, we get more people involved. So, if not for no other reason than to allow that to be a something to gravitate more of our people to be more involved in politics, more involved in what goes on in their community, more involved in law, more involved in what's going on, that I would like to use as a rally cry, provided obviously that she don't get in there and do something stupid and turn our people completely away from it. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that I continually deal with now in the black community, is that when black people think about politics, all we think about is voting. We don't think about putting people in positions of power. We simply think about casting our vote, and we think we done our part, but not doing any actual community activism, not doing any lobbying, not doing anything to get laws changed, not doing anything to enforce accountability within the community, within the politicians that's in office. See, as people, as average citizens, we supposed to force accountability no matter who's in those positions. And it's not enough of us that are doing that type of on the ground work. Because if more of us was involved in holding people accountable and pulling up the wool and seeing what kind of mess is actually going on, then we wouldn't be in these predicaments. And in that matter, it wouldn't matter who's in office if we had ourselves in a position where we are astute in the political arena. And so let me just say it like that.
Now,
Going back to
hold
going
on,
back.
Miss Sims, because you and Mr. Scott made a couple of statements that really kind of got under my skin tonight because as an
Really?
older as an
Yeah.
older generation, both of you said that you have not studied or know anything about Kamala Harris. This we're going to be voting for this woman in less than 2 years.
They
You're
just
going.
voted for her because she was black.
Wait a minute, hold on. I'm getting ready to get to that point. So, if you and Mr. Scott have not done your homework to know, how do you know what to go out and spread within your community? Why are you not informed about our political candidates when we are supposedly, as the elders in our community, the leaders? Have you forgotten your obligation to your black community, Mr. Scott? It takes
No.
more than writing a
The
book.
answer to that, the answer to that last question is no. And as far as Kamala Harris and president, this is not the time for a Kamala Harris presidency. I mean, there is too much stuff going on in this world with possible World War III, with pandemics. With this is not no time for somebody like Kamala Harris to be president of the United States. That's
Mr.
just my
Scott, this is
opinion.
World War IV. You've been in World War III since
World
you've been
War
born.
IV, whatever war it is, we don't need. I mean, this is not the time for a Kamala president, in my opinion. And I agree with what Dr. Casey was saying. I mean, these things are giving us the runaround. It sounds like the cable company and the telephone company. I mean, cable telephone company gonna turn my phone off. I got to get a brand new phone if I don't. So this is the kind of thing that they keep perpetrating on us. And my dad would never believe, if my dad were to come back, he would never believe we would have a black president before the Vikings would win the Super Bowl. He wouldn't believe that. He wouldn't believe that that could actually happen. I mean, so we are in a world of almost. Again, I just think it's the wrong time for a Kamala to be president. I don't believe that will ever happen. I don't know what's going to happen with Biden. Personally, I don't see him with another term. I mean,
Mr. King, I did not know Pamela Harris's background in depth, like someone where she's from. Uh, what is the Los Angeles that you said she's from? I did not know extensively her legal stuff, whatever, etc., etc. When she came on the scene, that's when I started looking at her, the content of her character, what she was saying, what she knew politically, how she was going to deal with. I didn't go back and research her record as a prosecutor or whatever. I did not go back as extensively like that because I knew she wouldn't be doing that type of work when she got to be vice president. And so it's not like I didn't check her out, which I did, and still she still has limited I think skills and political skills, etc., etc. And when Dr. Casey mentioned about we don't want politicians in there. We want a fresh new faces and ideas, and it can go both ways. I don't want to keep electing somebody, a political person that's been in there corrupting the city, the system that's corrupt, etc., etc., etc. I want someone that knows the game of politicians. That when they say they're not a politician, they're saying I'm here. They don't even know the political game. They don't know how it's played. They don't know who the players are. And when you put somebody in office like that, they're always going to be kind of backstepping because they're learning the system while the system could be killing the rest of us. And I want somebody in there that's going to be right up front, ready to look out for me and the rest of us. And so you can go either way. You can go a politician that's been in there for years and not doing anything, or contributing to the demise of the country, etc., etc. Or you can come with a politician, a non-politician, but I want them to know what the game is, and what to do uh, if they are elective. Like I keep saying, somebody Martian can as long as they know what they're doing and how to do it. I mean, I'll listen to them, and maybe even vote to them compared to whoever's out there willing and dealing with the system. And right now, I think we should be, as we are talking, and the country should be thinking about the next election, who's coming up, who's out there, etc., etc. As far and like what is it, the Supreme Court, the black fellow that's out there, forget his name, uh, Thomas. He's been out there for years and years, and he's still. I still believe Anita Hill in regards to me. He has no, I wouldn't vote for him to be on the Supreme Court. But here again, back then, how they played the game, and the politicals played the game, and how they wanted the Republicans want to stay in power and stuff. They promoted him and got him to the place where they wanted him to be, so that he could be on the Supreme Court to keep the Republicans in power in regards to judicial system, and it worked back then.
It works now. It works now.
Yeah,
It's still,
I mean, in
it's
terms of
6-3.
him, yeah, in terms
It's
of him,
six
it
three.
worked now.
It's 6-3 conservative as far as, and right now he's sick. Maybe we don't know how sick, but
Oh,
he's sick. So if we got
yeah,
a black woman on the Supreme Court, it would still be 6-3. But if he had to resign because of illness, it might make it 6-4.
yeah,
But
and I believe the Supreme Court can make decisions and do make decisions at the local level, and they can expedite certain things that come to them, like when the president, what was it?
hold on, Miss Sims. Now you really got me confused here. What can the Supreme Court do for you on the local level before it even gets to the Supreme Court? Because something has to happen in order for the Supreme Court to hear your case. You don't just walk out and say, I need the Supreme Court to hear my case because I've been locked up, so forth and so on.
Right.
There has to be a precedent in order for your
Yeah.
case to get in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and you're right. You have put people already in the system that's pushing the agenda forward, pushing it up to that level. And like who was it? One of the presidents, the recounting vote, Bush. I mean, that went before the Supreme Court within a week or so, in terms of them weighing in on decisions and stuff like that. So the Supreme Court works like you are describing, Mr. King, but also the Supreme Court has other ways that it can work and deal with, and that people put things in place so that they can readily deal with.
Okay. Honeybee, you want to comment on that?
There's a lot of things I was thinking in the process of that. One thing that I can say is, as someone who comes from literally both sides, I have a family member who is a district attorney. Actually, she moved up. She's not even district attorney anymore. But here in San Diego, I have a family member that was a district attorney, and I also have a father who has been in prison since I was 7. So I know how to look at it from both sides. In my opinion, having someone who is not a politician I mean, it's I don't know. I'm on the fence about a lot of things because I look at my family member who's a district attorney who will not take pictures with me or post me because I'm a Black Panther. So you have to deal with stuff like that. So you have someone who's a DA, someone who's a politician who will not recognize the movement of Black people. So if you want someone who's a politician, someone who was possibly a district attorney and stuff like that, you're looking at people who won't recognize movements because they don't want to be deemed as a certain they don't want to be put in a certain category. And then if you take someone who's not a politician, someone who doesn't know what they're doing, um, I mean, it's just it's like one of those situations where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. In my opinion, um, because I've been on both sides. I've literally lived both sides my whole life. I have one side of my family where everyone is in and out of prison. And then I have another side of my family where everyone is district attorneys, attorneys, police officers, sheriffs. So I have to sit there and I look at both sides and I have to understand both sides. And when it comes to someone being a politician, in my opinion, I just think that we need to put someone in office who actually has been through something. You've been through being a DA, you've been through looking at the political side, you've been a politician, but then also we need someone who has that background of a family member who has been George Floyd, a family member who has been Breonna Taylor. You need to have someone who has all of it. And if we honestly really want to actually be seen and treated as human beings, that's the only route that we're going to get is if we actually finally find someone who is a politician, you've been a DA, you've been through some traumatic experiences, you've seen a family member murdered or whatever, not even it doesn't even have to be murdered, but you've seen family members go through stuff that you know that you don't want to see yourself go through in order to be a real leader of this country. It's the only thing
brother
I can think of. And where do we find that? Who knows?
brother Williams. We keep watching and talking about these things, but you know, uh, do we just keep watching history repeat itself? I mean, we can't militarily take over the system. We can't, through actual numbers, take over the system. So, what are our alternatives to prevent annihilation, not only from without, but from within?
To me, it still goes right back to what I keep hammering on is enough more of us need to be involved and more of us need to be politically astute in what's actually taking place. And unfortunately, I feel like things have to get worse
Mhm.
to force us in a position where we recognize that, you know what, I actually have to step up and do something. And that almost seems to be the case. Let's just go back to your generation, James. When we had segregation, there was more black people with businesses. There was more black people that had degrees per percentage. There was more black people that were doing things, and the dollar was circulating within our community. We had businesses. We understood what was going on. And if I'm not mistaken, we even had more people involved in the politics at that point in time. So unfortunately, it's like our hand has to be forced. And I look at it even from the standpoint of where we are with this whole thing within Russia and Ukraine. Let's look at it like this, and let's throw this dynamic into the mix. You got China on one side of Eurasia, as what they call it, and then you got Russia on the other side, and you got the United States that has been dominating the world in terms of currency, in terms of world power for so long, and now it's at a point now to where they're talking about replacing the American dollar as being as being backed by the world currency. So China's moving in there and working with Russia in order to try to remove the United States as the dollar as being the world currency. And when they do that, you're going to see a collapse of the United States in terms of the power and might that it has. That is obviously going to be felt by black people first and foremost. And when something like that takes place, then people we're gonna be in a situation where we're gonna have to wake up and then take things back into our own hands in terms of now consolidating ourselves within our communities. Why? Because it's going to be a matter of a situation where people are going to have to pull their resources together in order to survive, and that's going to kind of force our hand. And one other point I want to reference a politician that I think it was definitely underrated, that went under the radar, but was a shining example of somebody who we should have had our support behind, that was in public office. Chuckway Lumumba. And if y'all don't know who he was the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. Y'all knew who he was? Very, very powerful brother. And not only was he powerful, but he was also the president of Republic of New Africa at one point in time. And when he ran for mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, white folks and black folks all knew that, and he did not hold his tongue on where he felt, as recognizing that at one point in time, being again, he was the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, before he died of illness in office, which I feel was a conspiracy, but that's a whole nother part of the show. But mind you, here go a mayor of a city who was a part of an organization that believed that the United States government must grant 5 states to set aside for black people so that we could practice self-determination for our people. So he was a black separatist. You hear me? And made it to a mayor. We have people out there that can truly represent us in public office. We just don't put ourselves behind them people. And then kind of going back to something Humble B want to mention, and I do want to say, there are people, politicians that the Panther Party and others have worked with and would support. But understanding, and overstanding the game, I have made sure that we don't go public with that, because obviously it will potentially ruin their position of being able to get in a position of office. So we have to oftentimes play spook by the door because we understand what's at stake. So it's not a matter of letting our ego get the best of us. If we know the right people to get behind and support, let's support them in whatever way possible, which don't always mean that we have to publicly come out and say, hey, this is who you want to go for, because at that same point in time, just like what I was saying about Chuck Lumumba, it would ruin a person's potential chances, possibly. And I don't mind being a part of an organization that sometimes have to go fly under the radar when it comes to who we actually support, because I understand how the game goes. But that does not mean that we can't still help and get the right people in positions of office. And I just need our people collectively across the board to be more aware of the fact that I mean, not there. Obviously, we're talking scarcity, but there are people that can impact in their own little way power for our folks. But it takes more of us, and it takes more of us being in position. Just like how Chuckway Lumumba does not get the credit he deserved, does not get the recognition he deserved when he was alive. We have people like that, and those people we need to get behind. When we know there's black political figures that we should support, or people within the community that can rise up to the ranks and get to that position, we should support it. We need to do more than just simply voting for the lesser of evils. That needs to stop being the order of the day. We need to get out of that mentality, because again, when China and Russia, if they come together, we're going to be probably wishing we dealt with the devil we do know.
Uh,
That's one to put on your head.
Mr. Scott, I heard about, when you were talking about the Somali community earlier, and there's a very viable Black Panther community within the Twin Cities. I also have not heard about any Black organizations reaching out to them. So once again, I'm coming up to the Black community doesn't want to work with the Somalis. You don't want to work with the Black Panthers. Who do you want to work with?
Well, who says these things? I don't know where you're getting all this information
Miss
because I have no
Miss
I don't know
Lynn
what
Miss Lynn Croft, Miss Lynn Croft, who has been on our Black News, is a member of the Minneapolis Black Panther Party. She's been on
well.
not only on our Black News, but she's also been on with Mr. Tim Scott. So once again, I say I do my research.
Well, you also seem to have a very love affair affinity with the Somalis, and that's fine.
I have
love
an
affair with you.
affinity for
I'm gonna tell you
anyone that
something
is.
that's going on with the Somalis.
Hold
I'm gonna
on,
tell
hold
you
on,
something that's going on with the
hold on.
Somalis
I
right
have
now.
an affinity for anyone that is doing something positive within the Black community.
Okay.
Right now, the
Okay.
Somalis are
Well, if
doing
you
that,
read,
and you guys are sitting
if
back
you're
there, sitting on your ass under your hands. You elected the same
if
mayor.
you're
You
if
still had
you're
the
so
same. You
astute,
still had the
if
same
you're
political police organization. So tell
you
me,
have the
what have
floor.
you done better?
You have the floor, James. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm asking.
Oh,
What is
thank
the
you.
Black
Thank you. I
community?
appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity. If you're so knowledgeable about the Twin Cities area, have you ever heard of Feeding Our Children? Have you heard of Somali run program? It's called Feeding Our Children. It says they're supposed to be feeding thousands of kids in the Twin Cities area. They're under FBI investigation right now because they've taken millions of dollars, several millions of dollars, and put it in their pockets. They've opened this. What is this restaurant? It used to be the Johnny Baker Black Legion Post, and they bought it. Oh, it's an event center where Ilhan actually had her campaign thing at this facility. All this money has flowed through. Oh, the feeding our just look up feeding our children. Just look up feeding our children. You'll see millions of dollars have gone to Somalis that have gone for Cadillacs, that have gone for
Can I can I
sending
can I
money back to
can I look
other
up?
countries.
I'm
that
I'm
have
kind of
sent
happy
kids.
that it ain't just Black people fucking shit up. I'm glad.
uh, but Mr.
And so, but you
Mr.
don't talk about that. But you love the Somalis so much. You think they're so. And I have no problems with any people that come in here and want to get a foothold in this country. Everybody deserves. This is what this country says they're supposed to be, but they continue to have their foot on our necks for some reason. They
Mr.
continue to not want to let us do what we need to do.
I keep trying to tell
Yeah,
y'all they
dude.
know who the land belong to. So if they let you get your good foot in, they ain't gonna be able to keep their stronghold. And
Yeah,
to what
but
Mr. Williams was saying, as far as the if the dollar goes away, I have two things to say about that. One is um the first thought is that what happens to the financial wealth that all of these people are securing now if that goes away. And then the second part was the reason why it would affect us so much is because we're so codependent on the system that when the
Yep.
system crashes, we don't have any substance to withhold ourselves up with. And I'm not talking about internationally. I'm talking about
Right.
just amongst the United
right.
States, like
But as
within
Mr.
our
Exactly.
Williams was
own.
saying earlier, we communities had more footholds in their neighborhoods. You had Black businesses. Here in the Twin Cities, you had Black banks, you had Black doctors' offices, you had because they wouldn't let you go to the hospitals, so they had their own offices. But now these things have all been dissipated with the economy, with the amounts you have to pay for housing now, with all kinds of companies are coming into the Twin Cities, I know for sure, and they're buying up all the single family houses so they can rent them to people. So people can't afford to buy them. They can keep them under their thumb by renting to them. See, home ownership, as we all know, has been the way of getting wealth. And generationally, we were starting to do that. we had businesses, we had our foothold in these various cities. Every city you went to, there were places you could go
But
that
what
we
we
knew
doing now,
were
Mr.
these
Scott?
places.
That was
Here's
then.
here's
What?
here's my thing about that is, so every time a black person starts either their own community, their own businesses and stuff like that, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but as soon as they do that, they start to feel bad and they start to draw back, and they'll just be like, well, we have to include everyone. But what about the Asian community? Every if you go to Los Angeles, California, there's a Chinatown. Here in San Diego, if you go onto Convoy,
Mhm.
it's Korea. If you go to New York, there's a Chinatown. Every place you go, every community has their
Mhm.
own sanctuary. My thing is, we got to get the black community to understand that we are a community. Why is it that as soon as we create something, we shut it down because, oh, well, we feel bad because the white people are saying that we're not including them, but are they saying the same things about the Asian communities, the Indian communities?
It's
That
between that humble bee and then when somebody get enough
Somali
success, they
communities,
sell out. And then
hmm
as
Mississippi,
soon as they
Somali.
get to a certain point, they sell it to the white folks. So even if we did have a foothold on something, it didn't just sold out because that money talk, and then they be in a bad position. And it's not a bad position for them right now. But what I've always said, probably since about 2014, is if we knew the value of what we really possess as a culture and creatively,
Mhm.
then we wouldn't sell off ourselves so easily because we sell off to monetize, but then if we're not even realizing that the only reason they're investing that type of money in it is because they see it way further than what we see it, and we so small minded that we be like, "Ooh, quick money, quick money, quick money," and then that quick money be the long term detriment to most of us because
but
we don't have long term plays.
that right there tracks back to everything that we're taught in schools. The
Hmm.
only thing that they teach us in schools when it comes to history is that we were slaves. How
Hmm.
about teach the fact that we were kings and queens so that our children can see that we are royalty? We can have a community. We can have funds and stuff like that. It's just super unfortunate that every other community they have all of their stuff in the history books. I remember I took AP history and I learned everything. I learned that Asians were so royal, Indians, everybody but us black people. All we know is we were picked up on a ship, we were slaves, we were here, we were slaves, and now we're still struggling. But what about the royalty that we were before?
They can't
What
teach that
about
part.
Miss Sims,
They
what
can't.
about
It would be too much. It would be too illuminating for black people, and they would. It's hard to keep a person stifled if they know the truth. But
Miss
as
Sims?
long as you don't know the truth, then you will never grow. You will stay small, and your mind will stay enslaved to the system of, well, we ain't never had nothing. We can't never do nothing, and then that mindset just keeps trickling down. It's
Wait,
crazy.
wait, hold on, Miss Sims, Mr. Scott. When we were in school, we were taught about the University of Timbuktu. The University of Timbuktu was the first university before they had one in Europe. Our generation was taught these things. When did they all of a sudden become expendable from the history books? Miss Sims.
So, like I said before, he who writes the history controls the history. And I personally believe that there is, within our black culture, there is a black Wall Street out there. There are black people out there that are qualified to represent us politically, what, whatever. I believe that, as Honeybee is saying, in regards to learning who the leadership is. I don't think we have to go our history. I don't think we have to go back as far as she stated, I believe there are people within our own communities that we don't know about, and as proof that Mr. Scott's book will tell you. One of the reasons I think, and Mr. Williams brought this up a while back in terms of Black people stepping forward and presenting themselves, is that historically we get killed off. That is one of the things I think that a lot of the things within the Black community is kind of kept beneath the surface in regards to what's going on out there, and that's to a disadvantage to us in regarding not knowing who each other are and where we are and how connected we are. Because as you remember, Black Wall Street, we got bombed. I mean, the United States sent planes and bombs and stuff to kill us. But I believe that as a collective around this country, and even in Minnesota, there are Black folk that are in positions that are doctors and lawyers and bankers and stuff. But we operate not in the public eye because we are targets, and because we don't not out front as other cultures are. That's a disadvantage to us in terms of the rest of us knowing who and where we are, so we can support them, so we can support what's going on, so we can, put our efforts and energy into these particular people. And Mr. King, you mentioned that there's what's this called, a chapter or whatever, in terms of the Black Panthers here in Minnesota, that you do your homework. Do you know if this Black Panther group here in Minnesota is connected with Mr. Williams?
Shouldn't that be your homework, not mine, since it's in your
No,
community?
but you brought it up.
You know exactly what's going on up here.
But hold on.
You brought it up. How do you know I don't know? How do you know I don't know?
But if you really want to know, no, they are not affiliated with the group that Mr. Williams is affiliated with. I did ask Miss Croft, I did ask Lynn about that, and I did get an explanation. So, like I said, if I'm here in San Diego and I can ask a question, I'm sure you can run across the street or on your computer and ask the same question. That's your community.
How do you know I'm not doing that already?
Thank you.
I didn't ask you. I asked Mr. Scott, because Mr. Scott was the one that was bringing up that was bringing
my
up
thoughts. Well, okay, if you're asking me, my thoughts. You know what I say about the rap game. I've already said.
Oh my God, this ain't got nothing to do with the rap game.
Some of the things Mr. Williams sent me, I appreciate that. Look at your great Kanye West. He's diminished himself.
I knew when y'all talked about Jesse that he was going to bring up the rap
game. He's going to be like Spud Webb. He's going to be like Muggsy Bogues. He's diminishing himself by what he's doing. And he's probably going to end up in jail. But see, this is what I'm saying. These are the people that they continue to put up in the forefront. You turn on the YouTube, you turn on Yahoo, and then you see about this. You see what this is. Inconsequential, as Mr. Tucker would say. It's all inconsequential. See?
And I missed that conversation about the rap game, so I'm listeing to learn what's going on. And I think if I knew it'd give me a headache, it would give me a headache.
Don't pay Mrs. Scott.
Looks like I've got another call. I've got another call. Folks, I've got another call. I've got to grab this other call. I hope I can join you folks next week. I would love to join you next week. But I've got another call, and I've got to sign out.
All right, Mr. Scott.
Good night, Mr. Scott. Good night.
So y'all saw an example of a politician move. He stabbed and then took off. Perfect move. Perfect move.
And he lives he lives for another day.
Now,
He
well,
took a
now,
jab through Kanye West at us as if he represents all of us, and then said, "All right, I
Oh my
gotta
god,
go."
he doesn't even represent the rap game at this point. He is out there
That's
in his
not rap.
own world.
That's crap.
well, hey, uh, as always, I know we've had fun, and I think we discussed some very poignant points. Honeybee, I'm going to give you the last word since you don't come on that often. I'm going to start with Brother Williams. Why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening and tell everybody where they can find out about the San Diego Black Panther Party?
All right. My final thoughts would just simply be this, people. We, as a collective, we need to redevelop the appetite for self-governing, redevelop the appetite for wanting to be involved in our own accountability as a people, our own way of life, our own moves made toward learning and embracing political education. Within the Panther Party, we refer to all education as political education simply because the idea here is that everything revolves around us wanting to be involved in self-governance. Self-governance meaning you're gonna have to understand politics. Politics is everything. Whether you're dealing with war with bloodshed or war without bloodshed. So our people need to redevelop the attitude and the appetite to do better, to do more, to not simply only be involved in something because it has a dollar attached to it, but we must learn to embrace self knowledge, self worth, and self value as a collective, not simply as an individual. We have to restructure our thoughts on what makes up a family, and that needs to be an inclusive of a community. And I just want to leave us with that. And you can find us, the San Diego Black Panther Party. Easiest place to do it is through our Facebook page, San Diego Black Panther Party. We also have a website page. Either one, you can go to the Facebook and it'll take you to the website. So, you know, let's just move forward, people. Let's embrace learning, embrace growth, and embrace accountability.
Thank you so much, dear Brother Williams. Dr. Casey, I know you got to get your beauty sleep. Come on with
Well,
it.
first and foremost is earlier Miss Sims mentioned that in the military, when we was talking about politicians, that when you go through training so that when you get on the ground you go. And the truth of the matter is no matter how much training you have, there is never enough training to prepare you for war. You won't know
Right.
what you know until you actually get your boots on the ground
True.
and you
I
hit the
agree.
ground running and you got to actually shoot, duck, and put all of those things into play. It's like um, wisdom isn't the amount of things you know. Wisdom is what you do with what you know, because until you're able to act it out and apply it to your life, it isn't even wisdom. It's just a whole bunch of stuff you know. So if you know a lot but don't do nothing with it,
Yeah.
then you just a person that's full of knowledge. And then when it comes to the school system, a lot of people disregard the school system as it stands right now. Now, of course, I believe that they need to add financial literacy and psychology
Mhm.
to the school system. These are my personal beliefs. These are beliefs that I've said for a very long time. Um, However, the school system teaches you the system that we need to maneuver within, around, and through. So, although a lot of people despise the school system, even though they're not teaching us everything we need to learn, it's teaching you enough to manipulate the system in a which way to where it won't be used against us. It's almost like being in the military. I learned a lot from being in the military, but what I learned more is that I'm a machine and how to use myself as a machine. Now, whether I choose to use myself for good or evil, for a government agenda or my own agenda, I am still a machine. We are all machines, but we need to understand that machines, this computer that we're on, it was created based on an artificial intelligence version of us. The motherboard, all of the way it works, it is another version of human intellect in a machine. And I'm saying that because we have the ability to do everything. A computer originally was them ladies at NASA. Now we're looking at a screen and we call it a computer. So when you understand those type of things, then you'll understand what knowledge really does to you, and even the things that you don't think mean anything, like math, which is reasoning and comprehension, knowing how to look at a problem and break down that problem until you can find the solution. A lot of people struggle with finding solutions, so they complain all the time. Those are the same people that probably complained about their math problems instead of working the math problem until they were able to find a solution. Everything that we deal with mostly is about finding solution to pre-existing problems and pre-existing effects of those problems. So once we begin to understand the way that they're training our mind and use that for our own benefit, then we'll actually see progress the way we need to see it. Stop believing in the American dream and create the dream that you want to see and become your dream. The last thing, if you want to follow me, Speaking Freedom on all social media, Speaking Freedom TV. We have recently went over 200,000 views on Speaking Freedom TV on Vimeo, so that's really good. And we do feature this show on the last 2 months at the end of the season as a bonus. So tap in, learn something, and always be willing and ready to go to the next level through being open minded.
Thank you very much, Dr. Casey. Wonderful words as always, Miss Sims.
Yes, my parting comments have made me kind of sad in this regard, um, and it touches bases on a couple things regarding Mr. Williams. And a while back, I said that when Black folk have stepped up and done things out in the open, we have been targeted and killed and whatever. And it reminded me of the original Black Panthers way back during our time when you would see these young men out proudly in their black and holding their guns out in public and doing things for the community. And it took a little bit, but the government, Hoover, wiped them out, killed them out. So that made me sad to think of that. And then the second thing that he mentioned when he was talking about the U.S. monetary system going away if we don't deal with it. It reminded me something I said last week in regards to our education system and our educating our young. And I said something like that. If we don't educate our youth, and our education is a way of actually teaching others to carry on how to deal with the world. And that if we don't teach our youth how to deal with stuff, other countries are watching how our demise and not doing things to educate ourselves and things. And they are going to come in and swoop down and take over. And it kind of why I'm sad about that. It kind of, when I heard him talk about that, it was an example of how what I was saying isn't too far, possibly isn't too far away in regard. We don't get our act together as black folk, green folk, white folk, yellow folk, whatever. I mean, this is real. This is real life in terms of evil exists in this world, and evil is out there ready to do you in if you aren't paying attention.
Honeybee, glad to have you on the show. Always glad when you come by. Why don't you give us your final thoughts and take us home for the evening?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. One thing I definitely want to say is, we're all worried about these politicians in the office. One thing that we can do to contribute to that is help our youth. The more knowledge we help them gain, the better we are in the future. If the schools don't want to teach them that we were kings and queens, we made it through slavery, we made it. And I don't want schools to always continue to focus on slavery. We were kings and queens before slavery. We fought through slavery, we made it. Then we fought through segregation, and now we're fighting through something else. Teach them that we can do better, and we will do better, and we will be on top. Um, Another thing is, like my chairman said, like Brother War said, join into, or even if it's something you have to have your family sit down, have conversations about it. Go onto our YouTube page. Political education. That is one thing that's 100% needed. Knowledge is power, and that's one thing that they don't want us to have is power. So, if there's anything that you want your youth to learn or whatever it is, or you want to learn yourself, I would highly suggest go to our Instagram page. We often post our political education classes, which are biweekly. And that would be on Black Panther Party _SD on Instagram. And then even from there, you'll be able to find our Facebook and everything like that. But I highly suggest that, if we cannot sit here and complain about the things that are going on in our political party, if we don't teach our youth, learn this, learn that, but also know this is where you came from, this is who you are. And if you play the right cards, you can be on top and we can change all of this.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, thank everyone for their participation. Look forward to talking to everybody next week at the same time. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Power to the people.
Peace and love. Bye bye.